My fellow Americans, tonight, I want to speak not as a politician, not as a man who once held office, but as a citizen, just like you. We have come through storms, we've argued, we've doubted, and yes, we've stumbled. But through it all, the American story has always been about rising again, about refusing to let anger drown out hope or division defeat our shared destiny. Now, some people believe leadership is about volume, about who can shout the loudest, who can throw the hardest punch. But true leadership is not about noise, it's about character. It's about the quiet courage to do what's right when the lights are off and no one's watching. It's about lifting others up, not tearing them down. We've seen a season of division unlike anything in modern memory. Words have become weapons. Truth has become negotiable. And empathy, once our greatest strength, has been cast aside as weakness. But I still believe with all my heart that this nation's soul cannot be silenced, because America has always belonged to those who believe in something bigger than themselves. You can't lead by fear and expect love in return. You can't lie your way into greatness. You can't build walls around truth and call it freedom, because freedom demands honesty, democracy demands accountability, and progress demands unity. So I say to those who thrive on chaos, your time will pass, because history bends toward those who heal, not those who hurt, toward those who build bridges, not those who burn them, toward those who see hope not as a slogan, but as a responsibility. Our story isn't finished, it's just waiting for those brave enough to keep writing it. With decency, with compassion, and with faith in one another, the work of democracy is never done. But neither is the American heart, and that, my friends, is something no one, not even the loudest among us, can silence. True leadership isn't about how loud a person can speak or how forcefully they can dominate a room. It's about the quiet, consistent power of character. It's about the ability to stand firm on principles, even when those principles aren't popular, to act with integrity when compromise might seem easier. The world has seen too many who confuse arrogance for strength, who mistake insult for influence. But real leadership doesn't thrive on tearing others down. It flourishes when it lifts people up. A leader's strength is not measured in insults hurled on a stage or the chaos stirred in a crowd. It's measured in the calm during the storm, in the steadiness of the hand that holds the nation's moral compass. A great leader understands that leadership is service. It's not about personal glory, wealth, or control. It's about responsibility to those who place their trust in you. When leaders forget that, when they treat public office as a stage for self-promotion rather than a platform for progress, the nation suffers. True leadership listens before it speaks. It understands that shouting may capture attention, but listening earns respect. It does not seek to divide people into camps of versus them. Instead, it searches for common ground, for that place where disagreement can still lead to understanding. Leadership is about patience. It's about the courage to absorb anger without returning it, to confront hate without becoming hateful, and to show grace in the face of disrespect. Real leaders don't play to the crowd, they guide it. They don't chase applause, they chase purpose. They know that in the long arc of time, history doesn't remember who shouted the loudest or insulted the most. History remembers who stood firm when it mattered, who showed decency when cruelty was easy, and who refused to lose their humanity in pursuit of power. When a leader stands before a divided nation, the true test is not whether they can win arguments, but whether they can win hearts. Whether they can remind people of their shared humanity, of their common destiny, of the simple truth that we rise or fall together. Because at the end of the day, leadership is not about one person's dominance, it's about one nation's direction. And only those who lead with humility, compassion, and courage can truly set that direction toward something greater than themselves. The soul of a nation is not built in its skyscrapers or its armies. It lives in the values of its people. It is found in how we treat one another, in whether we choose empathy over indifference, honesty over deception, unity over division. The greatest danger to any nation is not an enemy abroad, but the erosion of its moral foundation within. When truth is twisted to serve power, when lies become language, and when cruelty is mistaken for strength, a country begins to lose sight of who it really is. Reclaiming the soul of a nation begins not in the halls of government, but in the hearts of its citizens. For too long, anger and cynicism have drowned out empathy. We have been told that kindness is weakness, that decency is naivete, that to win we must crush those who disagree. But that has never been the American way. The strength of a nation has always come from its capacity to care, to see humanity in its neighbor, even when that neighbor votes praise or looks differently. When we stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other as partners in a shared journey, we begin to restore what was lost. Rebuilding the moral core of a nation requires truth-telling. It means having the courage to confront the uncomfortable, to admit mistakes, to acknowledge injustices, to own up to the promises we've broken. It's not about rewriting history, it's about learning from it. We can't move forward if we keep pretending that truth is optional. A country that hides from its reflection can never recognize its progress. Only when we face who we are with honesty can we become who we are meant to be. Empathy must return to the center of public life, not as a slogan, not as a performance, but as a lived principle. When leaders speak with compassion, when citizens listen with respect, when communities lift up the vulnerable instead of ignoring them, that is when the soul of the nation breathes again. We need to remember that power without compassion is dangerous, and freedom without responsibility is hollow. A moral nation does not measure success by the wealth of a few, but by the dignity of all. It does not celebrate cruelty as entertainment or mock decency as weakness. It seeks justice not just for those who can afford it, but for those who need it most. To restore the soul of a nation means recommitting ourselves to the timeless idea that we are all bound together, that our destinies are intertwined. When one group is left behind, the whole nation suffers. Reclaiming the soul of a nation demands courage, the courage to choose unity over division, the courage to forgive, the courage to hope even after disappointment. Because the soul of a nation, once fractured, can only be healed when people decide that decency and truth matter again, that we cannot move forward by reliving old grudges or feeding old hatreds, but only by remembering who we are, one people, imperfect, but striving, flawed, but faithful, wounded, but unbroken. Truth is the foundation of every lasting democracy. Without it, freedom becomes fragile and trust dissolves into suspicion. When lies replace facts, when leaders manipulate reality for personal gain, the very idea of self-government begins to crumble. Because a nation cannot chart its course if its compass is broken. The moment truth becomes negotiable, justice becomes meaningless, and the people, who are meant to be the ultimate guardians of democracy, lose their ability to make informed choices. Truth is not partisan. It does not belong to one political side or ideology. It stands on its own, unshaken by opinion or popularity. But when power starts bending truth to fit its narrative, when those in authority treat deception as strategy, they weaken not just their opponents, they weaken the entire system that sustains them. A lie may win a headline, a vote, or a moment of applause, but it cannot build a future. The truth, though sometimes inconvenient, is what allows a society to grow, to correct itself, to learn from its past. Freedom cannot survive in a culture that normalizes deceit. when people are fed a steady diet of misinformation, when falsehoods are rewarded and honesty is punished, they begin to lose faith not only in their leaders but in each other. And once that trust is broken, once citizens no longer believe what they see or hear, democracy becomes just another performance, a stage play where manipulation masquerades as leadership. That is why defending truth is not merely a political act, it is a patriotic one. Accountability must walk hand in hand with freedom. To protect liberty, we must hold those in power responsible for their words and actions. A free press must be free to question. Courts must be free to judge. Citizens must be free to demand the truth, not as a privilege, but as a right. When we allow lies to go unchallenged, when we accept dishonesty as normal, we give away the moral high ground that generations fought to protect. But truth is not just about institutions. It is about individual courage. It's about the citizen who refuses to share that false story online, the teacher who encourages students to think critically, the leader who admits when they are wrong. It's about the parent who teaches their child that integrity matters more than victory, that honesty is strength, not weakness. A nation that values truth empowers its people to think for themselves, to challenge corruption, and to choose leaders who serve rather than deceive. When truth is protected, freedom thrives. People can disagree passionately, yet still trust that facts are sacred. Progress becomes possible because debate is rooted in reality, not illusion. But when truth dies, democracy follows. That is why it must be defended every single day, not with anger, but with resolve, not with arrogance, but with faith in the power of honesty to heal, to unite, and to illuminate the path forward. Fear has always been the easiest weapon for those who wish to control, divide, or silence. It doesn't require reason. It doesn't require truth. It only needs a spark of anger and a crowd willing to listen. Throughout history, fear has been the tool of the demagogue, the tyrant, the manipulator. It thrives on chaos and uncertainty. It tells people that their neighbor is their enemy, that progress is a threat, that compassion is a weakness. But fear, no matter how loud, is always temporary. It feeds on darkness, and the moment light shines upon it, the light of truth, of courage, of hope, it begins to fade. Division, like fear, does not happen by accident. It is cultivated carefully, deliberately, by those who understand that a united people are far harder to deceive than a divided one. When citizens begin to distrust each other, when they are made to believe that the problems of the nation are caused by those who look different, pray differently, or think differently, the real culprits, the greed, the corruption, the lies, go unchallenged. Division blinds a society to its shared strength. It makes people fight over scraps, while those in power feast on control. The politics of fear promises protection, but delivers isolation. It convinces people that safety comes from shutting others out, that greatness is achieved by standing alone. But no nation has ever become stronger by closing its heart. The greatest chapters in human history were written when people chose courage over comfort, compassion over cruelty. Every civil rights movement, every act of justice, every step toward progress began with someone refusing to let fear dictate their actions. To reject fear is not to ignore danger, it is to refuse to let it define you. It is to say, yes, the world is uncertain, but we will not surrender our humanity for the illusion of control. Real strength is not born from threats or insults. It's born from empathy, from the will to understand, from the courage to reach across lines drawn to divide us. Because when we stand together, fear loses its power. When we listen to one another, division starts to dissolve. Fear divides, but hope connects. That the person who governs through fear may hold power for a season, but the one who leads through hope builds legacies that outlive them. The leader who feeds on division may command attention, but the one who unites hearts commands history. Fear has a way of burning bright but burning out fast because it leaves behind ashes, not foundations. Hope, on the other hand, builds slowly, but it builds something lasting, something no amount of hate can destroy. Every time we choose kindness instead of cruelty, every time we reach out instead of turning away, we strike a blow against fear. The antidote to division is not more shouting, not more walls, but understanding. To reject fear is to reclaim our shared humanity, to say that no matter how different we are, our futures are bound together. That is the courage this generation must rediscover. The courage to believe that unity is not weakness, but the ultimate act of strength. Hope is not a slogan that fits neatly on a poster or campaign banner. It is a discipline, a responsibility, a daily act of courage. It is not something we inherit or are handed. It is something we build one choice, one action, one moment at a time. Hope demands work. It demands patience when progress feels slow and faith when the road ahead is uncertain. It's easy to speak about hope when times are good. The true test comes when the night feels longest, when injustice persists, when division grows, when the world feels too heavy to carry. That is when hope is no longer a word, it becomes a lifeline. Hope is not denial of reality. It does not ignore pain or pretend that everything is fine. It sees the world exactly as it is, with all its flaws, all its wounds, and still insists that we are capable of better. It's not blind optimism. It's the stubborn belief that decency can still triumph over cruelty, that empathy can still bridge what anger tears apart. Hope is a quiet power, the kind that doesn't shout but endures. It's the voice that says, keep going, when everything around you says, give up. But hope requires responsibility. It calls on each of us to do our part to participate in the rebuilding, not just to wish for it. It asks citizens to show up, to vote, to speak truth, to serve their communities, to teach the next generation that kindness is not weakness and compassion is not foolishness. Hope without action is empty. Real hope is fueled by effort, the kind of effort that lifts others as it lifts ourselves. Too often, people use hope as a shield, something to hide behind instead of something to live by. But hope is not passive, it is active. It is what drives a mother to work 2 jobs and still dream of sending her children to college. It's what pushes a teacher to stay late with a struggling student or a volunteer to show up even when the world isn't watching. Hope moves people to believe that change, though hard, is possible, and that it begins not in government buildings, but in human hearts. Hope also demands memory. It reminds us of how far we've come, of the battles once thought impossible that were eventually won. The abolition of slavery, the struggle for civil rights, the fight for equality, all of them were born from the same spirit of hope. People who were told they were powerless stood up, and by their courage they proved history wrong. That same power still lives within us. Hope does not erase struggle, it gives struggle meaning, and perhaps most importantly, hope connects. It binds us to one another across boundaries of race, class, faith, and geography. When we hope together, we stop asking, what's in it for me? And start asking, what can we build together? Because hope at its core is the belief that tomorrow can be better, not by miracle, but by human will. It's a contract between generations that says we will not leave this world as broken as we found it. So, when others try to mock hope or call it weak, remember the most powerful movements in history began with people who refused to stop believing. Hope may not shout, but it outlasts the noise. It may stumble, but it never surrenders. And when it's carried by millions who refuse to give up on one another, it becomes the most unstoppable force on earth. Democracy is not a machine that runs on its own. It is a living promise, one that must be renewed and protected by every generation. It survives not through speeches or slogans, but through the faith and participation of its people. The spirit of democracy lies in the willingness of citizens to show up, to listen, to disagree without dehumanizing one another. It thrives on the belief that every voice matters, that no one is too small to make a difference, and that freedom, once earned, must never be taken for granted. When that spirit weakens, when apathy replaces engagement, democracy begins to fade, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, through neglect. The unbreakable spirit of democracy lies in its people, the factory worker who demands fair wages, the protester who marches for justice, the journalist who refuses to be silenced, the voter who stands in line for hours because they believe their voice still counts. These acts, though simple, are the lifeblood of liberty. They are reminders that the true power in any nation does not belong to one man, one party, or one ideology. It belongs to the people who still care enough to fight for it. Democracy is fragile because it depends on trust. Trust that elections are fair, that laws are just, that leaders serve the people and not themselves. When that trust is broken, cynicism seeps in. People begin to believe that their participation doesn't matter, that corruption is inevitable, that nothing ever changes. And that's when democracy starts to die from silence, not violence. But as long as there are those willing to speak truth, to hold power accountable, to stand up even when standing up feels lonely, democracy still breathes. The resilience of democracy is not measured by how perfectly it works, but by how fiercely it recovers when tested. It is built to withstand storms because it draws strength from its people's hope, not from their fear. Every protest, every election, every act of civic courage is a renewal of the democratic promise. It's a reminder that freedom is not a gift handed down from leaders. It is a covenant built up by citizens who refuse to let it slip away. Democracy does not demand perfection, but it demands participation. It asks not that we agree on everything, but that we believe in something greater than ourselves, the idea that all people are created equal and deserve a voice in shaping their future. It asks us to argue passionately, but respectfully, to stand firm in our convictions, but to listen with empathy. Because democracy is not just about winning, it's about belonging. It's about recognizing that the strength of a nation lies not in one person's dominance, but in the shared power of its people to choose, to change, and to create. Even in moments when democracy feels bruised, when lies and division test its limits, it endures. It endures because people refuse to give up on it. It endures because somewhere a young person still believes they can make a difference. It endures because no matter how deep the wounds of injustice may be, there are always those willing to heal them through courage and compassion. Is